This is GrantTalk, hosted by Libby Hikind, founder and CEO of GrantWatch and author of The Queen of Grants.
Hi, everybody. I'm Libby Hikind, founder and CEO of GrantWatch.com, and I am also the author of The Queen of Grants, From Teacher to Grant Writer to CEO. Today, I'm your host on GrantTalk, and I'm very, very pleased to have with me, his name is Daniel McNeal, and he is the director of the Quality of Life Grants at the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. And yes, right there in the corner of his screen, you see Superman, someone we all grew up with. And if you're much younger, then you're watching it on television with reruns. And what we know and what I experienced through my lifetime is watching somebody that represented what was all-powerful in the United States, faster than a speeding bullet, and just great core values. And he gave all the children something to be proud of and to aim for and to do good. And he ended up with a spinal cord injury. And this organization works very hard to find solutions to help people who are impacted by spinal cord injury to be able to continue to live a quality life. And I'm so pleased to be here showing what the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation does. And besides that, today, you're going to hear all about what happens when you apply for a grant, what happens to it after you submit, because even if this is not the focus of your nonprofit organization, applying for grants is. And you need to understand from a foundation's point of view, what does it look like when they start looking at your application? So Daniel, please tell us first about your participation as a director in this wonderful organization.
First and foremost, thank you, Libby, for having me on your podcast. Really appreciate it. You know, my role as the director of Quality of Life Grants program is a very pivotal one because I am utilizing the resources that we receive from the federal government to really provide impact in a myriad of different ways with a great bunch of collaborators that are in the form of grantees who apply for our program each and every year. It's just an amazing opportunity for me to really provide the necessary resources for these great people, these great organizations, these great facilities to further the whole idea of creating inclusivity as well as providing accessibility to those impacted by paralysis and disabilities that may lead to paralysis.
I was reading about your organization, and it didn't just start with Christopher Reeve's injury. It started way back with the teenager's injury and her father's desire to help her, and the whole community grassroots organization.
Right, and that's correct. We were originally founded in 1982. I believe it was Henry Sistel who was the original founder of the organization. But then also once Mr. Reeve was impacted by his injury years later, it was renamed in 1996 to be the Christopher Reeve Foundation. And then later, the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. And
they weren't just celebrities. They brought a lot of attention to the cause, but they were hands-on active workers in this foundation.
Oh, yes. Whereas, Mr. Reeve had obviously the spotlight and the cachet because of his past roles, because of his involvement in terms of policy and advocacy on work for individuals with paralysis. Mrs. Reeves, Dana Reeves, was very, very instrumental in creating the very program that I speak from this day. It was her brainchild in terms of creating this grants program to make sure that the legacies of both her and her husband would last much, much, much farther than either one of them.
Can you do that Superman intro for me?
Dun, da, 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 da.
Right, so the application process, taking it from what I read, this is for research and also to improve the quality of life of individuals. So does the grant only go to the research agencies or to individual families or to nonprofits who will provide the services? How does it work?
Yeah, so let me just provide a little bit of context. And Libby, I'm sure by now you probably went onto our website and had a chance to look around. So we always talk about today's care and tomorrow's cure. And the tomorrow's cure portion is the research portion of our house, where we're looking for, just like it says, ways that we can forward the innovation in spinal cord injury and figuring out different ways that we can contribute to making sure that one day we can actually down the road restore somebody the ability to move their limbs and walk again. But all the way back to the other side of the house is the today's care part, which is where I fall under, which is the quality of life and grants program. And under that grants program, we really focus really on organizations, nonprofits, grassroots, tribal entities that all provide these amazing resources to provide, as I mentioned earlier, accessibility and inclusivity for those impacted by paralysis.
So an individual would apply under the process or a nonprofit?
No. So we're strictly governed by the Administration of Community Living. And one of the guidelines that we cannot do, unfortunately, is provide grants directly to an individual, but we can provide it to an organization that serves a myriad of individuals at once.
So a YMCA, a JCC, these are nonprofits that we all know the names of easily. A hospital, rehab center, all of these can apply?
Yes, correct. As long as they're serving a minimum of 3 individuals who have paralysis, they can apply for an application. They can apply for our grant and submit an application.
How long is the application?
This is a few pages, but you have to understand because when you're really trying to make an impact in this field, you want to make sure that you have the best and the brightest and the strongest of organizations that can serve people efficiently, correctly, and also provide families and caretakers with the necessary resources that they have. We take this very, very serious, especially when it comes to providing parity in terms of who we select for these awards and making sure that they accurately represent the foundation as a whole.
And that's very important. The money is hard to come by, and we need to provide it to worthwhile, legitimate organizations. And I'm very happy to hear that you do a great review process on it. Okay, so once the nonprofit organization, let's go back. The Quality of Life Grants program that you're the director of is for quality of life. It's not the research arm, is it?
That is correct. Yes.
So now a nonprofit organization submits an application, and what happens next?
So the first thing that happens is I have a staff, a team. Once the process is closed, my team will do the initial assessment of the grants that are in the system. And this initial assessment is just making sure that each application has all the requirements that we have provided in our guidelines that's on the website. Make sure the budgets are there, the budget narratives, so on and so forth. Once that process is then completed, we then turn it over to our external reviewers. Now, our external reviewers are a collection of experts in the field of paralysis, board members, staff members of the foundation, and as well as individuals who are currently impacted by paralysis. We pair them up in groups of 2, and they look at each of the applications that they are assigned. Once that portion is completed, it then turns back over to my team. We take another look at them and then transition that into our internal review process, which, like its namesake, consists of mostly all of the staff members in our foundation who take a look at it, as well as key board members who have a vested interest in being part of the process.
Okay, so we have an initial screening.
Yes.
So if you leave something out, you don't answer a question, that's pushed aside. It's not going any further.
Right.
Then it goes to your next process.
Yes.
And these are the experts in the field. And then it comes back to you because they're saying, yes, this is viable. And now you go through it. Do you give out a certain number of grants in different areas of the country? Do you separate it that way? If you have 10 grants and they're all pretty equal, what happens?
No, we're open to all 50 states. So we're not going to limit ourselves geographically. It's just about the strength of the application and the innovation that they're trying to provide in terms of moving the needle.
So what grant has stood out in your mind that's been funded?
I'm glad that you asked that, Libby, because I recently did a site visit to Annapolis, Maryland. I visited an organization called CRAB, and it's a funny name, but like its name, it's called Chesapeake Region Accessible Boating. So this organization is a beautiful marina with a facility that assist individuals who would like a sailing experience. And I spoke with the executive director, Paul Bowling, and he said, right off the bat, we don't provide rides, we provide sailing experiences. So individuals who have paralysis are lifted into one of the boats that are accessible by the Hoyers that we provided, because we gave them $15,000 plus for 3 Hoyers to safely lift them from their chairs into these boats. And they're moving the sails, they're doing the rudders, they're turning and steering the boats. And they even have a sip and puff vessel for an individual who may suffer from quadriplegia, who may have quadriplegia.
So we get phone calls from organizations, and they do some wonderful things, and they're looking for funding. Now, if they looked for funding with a twist, how can we help people that are disabled from spinal cord injury? Then they would have funding for their program. So think of an amusement park. If they could provide an experience, then not only would their amusement park get funding for what they want to do, and then they can continue to do it after the funding runs out, they'd also get a lot of publicity for what they're doing as well. So this is how somebody thinks outside the box. You have a program, maybe it's an after-school program, maybe it's somehow to build with Lego whole cities or something, and maybe that's something that could then be offered, some experience that would make the people that are injured with spinal cord have an enhanced life experience.
Right. And you know, using the example that you noted with the amusement park, you know, in that case, it would have to be tied into some program, a nonprofit program that really is for trying to provide an experience for that organization. Most of the accessibility things that we do, as you noted earlier in our discussion, is really with you know, universities, hospitals, nonprofit organizations, and entities like that. And we may do a myriad of different things, whether it be making sure that there are adequate ADA compliant bathrooms, or push button doors for individuals, or widening doors so chairs can get through. Again, not to sound like a broken horse, but the theme and the really passion for us is about restoring independence and creating accessibility.
I was on a cruise and I was in the restroom. I could not figure out how to get out.
Yes.
If I opened the door, it was like I needed much more muscle than I had, until I realized, oh my, all I had to do was press a button. It was there, right? So it just, the signage just wasn't there. And I'm like, am I locked in here as somebody who could walk? And I can understand how we need to do both, right?
Yes.
We have to incorporate it. We have to have better signage for everyone so everybody can find those buttons. I really love what you're doing. I see so much robotics happening now for spinal cord injury, and with the new AI and how they can manipulate and kind of model what a person without an injury does, and have the robotics do it with the person, unbelievably. And the fact that you're able to do this and offer these services through a grant program is phenomenal. Tell me, what mistake do people make when they're submitting?
This is a very common question that I often get. The mistakes that people typically make, or potential grantees, is we provide a robust amount of information. And I think sometimes, every once in a while, you have someone who may skim through it. all of the information that you need to really position yourself in a very strong way to get one of our grants is on that website. And, unfortunately, because of the nature of our grants award process and the competitive nature, we have to be very, very strict and very, very tough because, as I mentioned earlier, ACL has some very strict guidelines that we have to do so. So one of the key mistakes, please, you have to make sure you read all of the information before you start the application process.
Follow directions. I say it in my book. I devoted a whole section to it, which should be common sense, but we're in a hurry. People don't read as well as they should. And I always like to print out an application, put it in a binder, and I find all these little sticky arrows, and I highlight and I put arrows because I don't want to forget anything. If you leave something out, you might just work so hard and forget something, and your application doesn't get past the first assessment.
Right, exactly.
So, well, it's such a pleasure to have you and
Thank
to
you.
be able to display the great work that the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation is doing, and let everybody know, if you want to hear and see and view more of these podcasts, you need to subscribe on YouTube, on Apple, iHeartRadio, or Spotify so that we can keep giving them to you, because there are so many funding sources out there and they have great ideas for you and of how to enhance your own organization through grants. Daniel, thank you so much, and congratulations to your organization. Just keep doing what you're doing and growing and representing the American way.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Libby.
Thank you.